So continuing our Unit 2 on derivatives, the next skill is on tangent lines and tangent line approximations. There's really only two formulas that you need to know, so I encourage you to pause the video, take these down. First, the equation of any line is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So the two things you'll need for the equation of any line are first, a point, which would be our x1, y1, here and here, and then we also need a slope. Now when we're finding the slope in the realm of calculus, rather than m, we'll just label that f prime of x. So we'll find the slope by finding the derivative. When we're doing a tangent line approximation, it'll say use a point to approximate, for instance, if we have y equals cosine of 3x, and it says approximate f of 2. So obviously we don't know what cosine of 2 times 3, we don't know what cosine of 6 is. It's not an angle that we're familiar with. So that's the instance where we would use a tangent line approximation. So please memorize this. We're using one number, a, to approximate f of x. So since f of x is what we're approximating, or the thing that we're trying to estimate, that will always go on the left side. So the x is the thing that we're approximating. So on the right side, you're going to need three things. So you'll need a, f of a, and then f prime of a. It's a good idea to find these three things first before plugging into the formula. All right, let's jump into number 14. It says, find the equation of the tangent line to this function at x equals 4. Since we're finding the equation of line, we need two things. First, we need a point, and then a slope. So let's find our point first. X is given to be 4, so if we want to find the y value, we're going to need to plug it in, plug the value right in. And now let's evaluate by finding g of 8 first. So go to 8, g of 8 looks like it's 2. So now we're interested in f of 2, which using our graph here is 7. We now have our x and our y. Now let's find the slope. To find the slope, we need to take the derivative. So let's call this guy, as we have in the past, y. Now we have to find the slope. Slope always means we're finding the derivative, but keep in mind, we don't want the general slope. We want to find the slope at x equals 4. So we're going to be looking for f prime of 4, or actually not f prime because we want this entire expression. That's why we'll say y prime. And then we want y prime evaluated at 4. So let's go ahead and find y prime first. We'll use the chain rule not once but twice because I have a function inside of another function that's inside yet of a third function. So the derivative of the outside is f prime. The inside guy will stay the same. Times. Now let's take the derivative of g of 2x, which will be g prime of 2x. And since there's a function there, multiply by 2. Next, we're going to evaluate it at 4, so we're just plugging it in. And in our final step, let's look at the graph to figure out what g of 8 is. So g of 8 is 2, so this becomes f prime of 2 times g prime of 8 times 2. Now let's figure out what f prime of 2 is. So this is not f of 2, it's f prime of 2. So what should we be looking for? We'll need the slope. So at 2, the slope of f, I'm going to use just counting, it's rise 1 over 1. So the slope would be positive 1. And then g prime of 8 is the slope of g at 8. Let's count. That's down 1 over 2. So that's going to be negative 1/2 times by 2. And we find that the slope at x equals 4 is negative 1. Now that we have our point and our slope, we can plug into our point slope formula, which is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So y minus 7 equals negative 1 x minus 4, and we're done. Okay, number 15. Again, we're finding the equation of the tangent line to this function at x equals 2. Why don't you pause the video and try this one yourself? So the first thing I always like to do is write down the two things that I need anytime I'm asked to write the equation of a line, any line. The point is easy. They're already telling me that x is negative 2, so I'll just need to plug that in here to find the y value. Let's do that off on the side. So I found my y value to be 3. Let's find the slope now. The slope will always be the derivative. Now, we're going to label this y so that we can take the derivative on the left and on the right. Chain rule, apply the derivative on the outside first. Everything inside now stays the same. So f of 5 minus 2x is unchanged. And since that's a function in there, we'll multiply by negative 2. If you got all three of those steps, then you are a wizard with the chain rule, even when there's 3 functions. We could move the negative 2 to the front if we wanted, but it doesn't matter. We're ready to plug in x equals negative 2 to find the slope at this point. So g prime of so 5 plus 4 is 9. F of 9, so I'm working on this part right now. F of 9 is, here's 9. F of 9 looks like it's 8. So I have g prime times f prime of 9 times negative 2. Now I just need to find these two slopes, and I know I'm dealing with slopes because I see the derivative symbol. So at 8, the slope for g is negative 1 over 2. And at 9, the slope of f looks like 1, 2 over 1, so it's a positive 2. And we have this negative 2 at the end. We need to bring it down. So let's simplify. The 2's cancel, and my final answer is positive 2. Okay, that I said final answer, but that's just the slope. Let's now plug all that in for our equation of the tangent line. Plugging in y1 is 3, my slope is 2, and x1 is negative 2, so I'll write plus, and we're done. Okay, now we come to our first linear approximation problem. If f of x is 2 cosine x plus 1, use a linear approximation, or they could have said use a tangent line approximation at x equals 3 pi over 2 to estimate f of 8. So the key here is to identify x and a correctly, because we're going to use our formula. So let's always write our formula first. But notice that the thing that we're estimating is labeled x. And here they want me to estimate f of 8. So 8 is actually my x value because it's the thing I'm trying to estimate. Plug it in here. And we're using this guy to estimate f of 8. So this is my a. You'll always use a to estimate x. So it's a little bit tricky because the thing that's labeled x is actually always the a in our formula. Let me say that again. The guy that's labeled x, it's given in the question, is actually the a in our formula. So if x is 8 and a is 3 pi over 2, now we just plug it all in. So we need f of 3 pi over 2 plus f prime of 3 pi over 2 times x minus 3 pi over 2. And actually I know that x is 8, so I should label that. So like I said before, you're going to need 3 things here. You need to know a, then you need to know f of a for this tidbit, and then finally you'll need f prime of a for this piece. So use a sidebar to find all these pieces so that the AP graders are not, you're not muddling your work for your graders. You want to leave that nice and clean. So f of a means we're just plugging it in. So we got 2 cosine of 3 pi over 2 plus 1. Cosine of 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2 is down here, and cosine is x over r, so that's going to be 0. So it'll be 2 times 0 plus 1, which is just 1. And now let's find f prime of a. Instead of a here, I should have 3 pi over 2. Now before I can find f prime of 3 pi over 2, I need to find f prime of x. So f prime of x is going to be, what's the derivative of cosine? Good, it's negative sine. Plus 1 disappears. So now that I know f prime of x, let's find f prime of negative or positive 3 pi over 2. Negative 2 times negative 1. And my slope then will be positive 2. Now we can plug in. F of 3 pi over 2 is 1. F prime of 3 pi over 2 is 2. And then we still have 8 minus 3 pi over 2. You are done.